Welcome to the Uplift, where we are uplifting our lives, uplifting each other, and uplifting our communities together. Thank you for joining myself, Cy Herrera, and Tessa Savala here, two women, two attorneys, doing it our way, and inviting you here each week to share in on the stories, advice, and life lessons we've picked up along our journeys that keep us uplifted, and that will hopefully do the very same thing for you. Now buckle in and let's get ready to be uplifted.
Hello. As always, I'm Tessa, and I am joined by the amazing, accomplished, cannot get enough of her, Cy.
And I'm honored to be here with the fabulous Tessa and all of you. Thank you for listening in.
So it's fun. Everybody knows that I work in and around politics in Texas, and it's been quite a week in Texas with a historic impeachment trial, which hasn't occurred in more than 100 years. And, politics is it's full of personalities, shall we say. And so, it's kind of shut down business, but it really made me think, are we all doing what we want to be doing? Like, have we found ourselves in roles or with people or with friends or that we just kind of like fell into and it just seemed like, oh, okay, this is what the rules dictated, or did I take a career because my parents wanted it and I may not have wanted it, excuse me. But
Or it's the next thing.
yes.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
next thing that
Or
follows.
or I hadn't gotten married by the time I was 30. The thing I heard when I was in college, you're supposed to get married by the time you're like 27 and start having kids by the time you were 30. And there was like a whole laundry list of like times and dates. And I'm like, wow, that's not how life works, but okay, whatever. But I feel like so many people are just doing what is either expected of them or what they think the rules say or what their best friend did or what someone they admire did. And is it, I don't think that, I don't think humans fit into that kind of mold. And so it made me really wonder, are we doing what we want to do? Like, do we need to Marie Kondo our lives? Just like Marie Kondo asked us, does this sweater bring you joy? Like, and what I do is what I'm doing bring me joy. It's going to the grocery store every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. bringing me joy, whatever it might be, right? Like, do we all need to like mix it up, change it up, and find things that we want to do?
Take stock. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, we're all, I mean, they call it a rat race for a reason. So,
Oh God. Like that. Do I want to be in the rat race? Or
yeah,
do I want to
yeah.
run away to some cottage in the country and have a
Mm.
greenhouse?
Yes, run to the beach. For me,
Yeah.
and I mean, yes, and I think a lot of people maybe have been doing that for the first time too. Um, but it's kind of interesting. Like everything has kind of gone in waves as well. So, it made me think about the time that we were all kind of cooped up, and COVID really made everybody a retreat in a way, and almost almost like a forced reflection time in a way, because you just have so much time inside, and less time with others. And so I'm sure everyone had a different experience, but I know a lot of people for the first time did take stock of their lives and what they were doing. And the other part is, like, we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know if it was
Yep.
always going to be like this. We didn't know, if it was going to change slightly. I mean, we just didn't know. And so the other part was like, what could life look like now? Or, how can we set up our lives to where it makes sense for the long term? And so I'm glad people have done that, in this recent history. But I mean, at the same time, there's also this wave of like, get back to work, go back to the office, and go back to normal, and go back to the way things were, type of thing. Like, there's all that energy, and so I wonder if, like, it's having a resurgence in a way, like the ideas, the forces that be of, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to get into this, you have to get into it now. Like, there is some kind of, energy that's very like pushing, it's pushing people in a certain direction. And it's really interesting to me to see how people have thought outside the box and found new ways of life and work. But still, so many of us, I think, it's really a lack of actually like exposure and like really how do you imagine something that you've never seen anyone do? You know, like when I learned about consulting, I just thought like, huh? Like you don't have a job basically, like I mean, it was really a strange concept to me because I never understood what that was. I didn't understand how people could make a business off of it. And so it's just that part too. Like some people don't even have the exposure to know. I mean, like so many people picked up and found a way to have remote work and now they're living,
Mhm.
all over the world or they're living in Sao Paulo or whatever. Like they're out there doing some other kind of interesting thing. But I mean, for a lot of folks, I mean, it's there, it was like, let's survive this very hard
Right.
time. And now let's try to get back to normal so that we can maybe not have like quite as hard of a life and it can go back to normal, like I
But what
think
is
that it's a really
normal?
interesting, exactly. And what is normal? And like, do you want a new normal, to take from
Yes,
COVID times,
I
and
do. I do want a
yeah.
new normal.
Yes, yes, and so to have a new normal, I mean, I think this is one of the first and most critical steps actually is to take stock. Like, where are you? Is this really where you want to be in your heart of hearts? Is this really the path that you want to keep going on, right? Because it's not even like what you're doing today. It's where does this path lead you in the long term?
Mhm. Yeah, I think that the pandemic gave us permission to start
Hmm.
asking those questions.
Right, right.
And like I think any tragic event does, it forces you or allows you to start looking inward.
Mm,
And I think we're learning from it because I feel as though like most of the articles in the news nowadays, when it comes to like employment related issues and going back to the way things were, those
mhm.
have all been failures, right? Like, and then you read like
Yeah.
Microsoft changed its work pattern to 4 days a week and saw
Hmm.
productivity go up 40%.
Yes.
Or Amazon, I think in Japan, demanded return to work for their programmers, and
Hmm.
the programmers like revolted and said no and quit.
Mm.
Like, you know, how how do we figure out what we want and do what we want when maybe the world is also not ready for it?
Mm.
Because I feel like people who are hanging on to the old ways are the people who are not ready for it.
Absolutely, yeah. And we're gonna have to bring them along pretty
Yes, we
much. I
are.
mean,
I don't know about
it's
you, but
yeah.
the past ways weren't that great, right? Like there was
No, 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 no. I mean, that's why there
people
were
would,
some. I mean, there was a lot of
yeah,
conflict around it actually.
yeah,
A lot of hard fights were fought. Like I mean, there's just to get like some of the. I mean, really just like decency and very much like can we get like a basic human situation over here, and I mean those fights are still being fought just for that.
oh yeah,
And so it's interesting to think about this because it's different in everyone's life, of course.
yep,
And it's very scary is the other part. I just
mm,
sentences, when you stop and you really think about where you are and where you're going and if it's where you want to go, one of the reasons why you're on that path, like Tessa was talking about, like what you were just saying, is something to do with, well, that's what society told me to do, or that's what my parents told me to do, or that's what my friends expect of me, that's what my family expects of me, or this is security. I mean, we can't, I mean,
yep.
that's probably the biggest thing. It's like, this is the part that this is the thing that you've been doing. It's been working out. You're surviving at the very least. Maybe you're even thriving. I think that's the hardest part, really, is when you get rewarded. And that's how society gets you to do what they want you to do. Like they just keep rewarding you for doing something that maybe you don't care anything about, or you really don't want it. But it's just so easy, right, for you to take that opportunity or to take that path. And so I love this conversation because it's very real. It's very, very real, and it's something that at any point in your life you can realize for the first time ever, hey, I can do whatever I want. I mean, you can
Mhm.
have that revelation anytime in your
Yeah.
life, where you
Oh,
can say
yeah.
like, yes, like this is possible for me, and I'm gonna go for it, no matter what. And and there's a big leap of faith there, and you have to be basically really internally ready. And that's why the internal work is so important. Like you have to be really ready to go and take that leap and not basically like, kind of have fear without having any fear, if that makes any sense, right? Like you can know intellectually how, hard it's going to be, the odds, all of that good stuff, and then you have to do it anyways. and and go with it.
And I will say that I fully recognize that a want might be security.
Mhm.
And,
Mhm.
you know, I think we all need to understand maybe that's it. Maybe it's understanding what our wants really are. And if it
Mm.
is security, understand that that's why you're there and embrace that that's what your want is. And that's okay. And maybe
This
your
is
want is to fit
mhm.
in.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's what, or your
Maybe
want
that's
is,
important. Yeah.
yeah, maybe it is important to you that you do not disappoint your parents. I don't have that problem, but I think I understand that a lot of people do.
Right, right, right. Yeah, and I mean, I think, and again, that's why like the internal work is really important, right? Because you
Mhm.
really have to, and when I say internal work, I mean, reflecting in, and taking stock of your past, your trauma, all of the things that make you who you are and where that comes from, and just knowing that, like just seeing it and acknowledging where it comes from, and then choosing whether or not that's something you want to carry with you or you want to lead you, right? Like, I mean, it can be a choice, but seeing it is the first and most important thing. And the other thing that came up for me while you were speaking was I've seen something recently where uh, they were talking about how you know we we are sometimes in a place where we are figuring out where we want to be, where we want to go, and we essentially have to decide not what we want in life, but the way that they framed it was that we have to decide what pain we're willing to endure,
Oh,
which which I found so interesting. I found this really interesting because it's something that I see so often where people will be like, I want to be, famous. I want to be rich. I want to be a rock star. I want to be whatever. Like I want to have this, I want to have that. I want to do this, I want to do that. And it's easy really in a way to say I want that, right? Because it looks shiny and it's
mhm.
nice and it looks great, right?
And you
But
don't
with this,
realize like how lonely and isolated these people are.
right, or even just like what it took to get there truly, right? And so
Oh
this is
yeah.
why it was such an interesting perspective because I found it, I don't know why, but for me, like it rang true. Like it really, I related to this because what I've realized, going through life is like, I'm definitely a product of the whole puritanical value system, right? And so I always find myself like thinking like I need to be working harder. I need to be doing like even when I just already have things that I'm like, do I deserve them unless I'm working really hard for these things, right? And so I'm noticing it just so that I can deploy it, right? So that I can reject it maybe or find a different way to understand it. But those feelings come up and I realize like this is a really interesting concept that you have to think about really what you're willing to endure. And maybe it doesn't have to be, as hard as you think it would be. But this person said, for example, that they always wanted to be a rock star and they were just like enamored with this idea. Like they would just fantasize about like just, like shredding and playing guitar, all the solos, all the things in front of crowds of people. And, they just had this rock star fantasy. And then he thought, okay, I'm going to do it. So he started learning how to play guitar when he was a teenager. He, started taking lessons. He tried to get a band together. And then he's like, okay, I have to try to get all these people together. I have to try to get gigs. I have to lug this equipment around. I have to set up. I have to tear down. I have to, and it becomes like the reality of the situation is so much more than the fantasy of the situation, right? Like, people really in general don't realize, like, how much work it is to be a musician, actually, and this was his point. It was really his point of, like, it's not, the fantasy I really had in mind because I didn't know about, like, what pain I would have to go through to get there, like, what would I have to really sacrifice or what would I really have to put in to get it? And so it was just really interesting where he was like, I really do want to be a rock star. He's like, I thought I wanted to be a rock star. He's like, but I really don't want that. He was like, if I really wanted it, I would want all of it, if that makes sense. Right. And so I just thought it was a really interesting perspective because it's true. Like, you can say like, I want the end result. But in order to get the end result, you have
Yeah.
to accept all of the things that come along with it from the beginning to the middle to the end and the ongoing, like, you have to accept all of it. So it's like, what do you really want? And I actually, like, when you say take stock about things, I think about this all the time, actually. I really do. Like, last night I was at an event and people were talking about politics. Actually, I have people who are like want me to run or like they want to just like be in a campaign and help somebody run, and I'm always like thinking like like
Yeah.
I'm always thinking like I know how much work that, or I don't even know how much work it would be, frankly, but like what I do know and what I can guess, I'm like, that's already too much for me. Like, I already know that I don't want to do that, like, because I don't want it enough, basically. If I really wanted it, I would have to want to do all of the work that it's going to take to get there and to really get into that place, and then do the work too with all the people there. So, that's just another interesting way to think about it, is like, are are you thinking about the whole thing and what you really, really want, and what you're willing to do to get it, basically. And so after taking stock, I think that's the next question, is like, what do you want? And, are you ready? Are you ready to do the things?
One, I am very thankful that you mentioned Puritanical Society before I did. Might be a record for us.
Right.
I very much appreciate that because the minute you said what kind of pain you were going to endure, I have this vivid image of a scene from, oh God, Boardwalk Empire, where
Mm,
our FBI agent, I think he was an FBI agent, maybe a alcohol ATF agent, I don't know. Anyway, he was very much into beating himself with a stick
mhm,
whenever he like needed
mhm.
to punish himself for something that happened
Yeah,
in his day-to-day life. And that's what I
yeah.
envision. I'm like,
I so
oh,
envisioned that from some
people.
movie too. I don't know what movie it is, but I think it was a whip, and I think it was Catholic.
Yeah. And just like, does not compute in my little Swedish brain. But anywho, it
It
is
is a
so
real
true. Like
thing. Yeah.
I'll always get a lot of, oh my God, I can't believe your husband's a chef. And I'm like, okay, you do realize that in traditional restaurant world, people eat at night and people eat on the holidays. So when
Yeah,
do you think
absolutely.
he's working?
Right.
Nights and holidays. So you have to be
Exactly.
willing to understand the fact that you are going to be by yourself on nights and holidays.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
maybe it's that we kind of like gloss over the crappy
Mm.
parts in the
Well,
United
yeah.
States,
Yeah. Yeah.
or we
Yeah, yeah.
don't recognize them. Like we don't recognize necessarily. We say you have to do the hard work, but we don't recognize the hard work it takes to get somewhere. Right? Like
Mm.
we're all supposed to be that swan gliding on the lake,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
swan
yeah.
is like kicking back and forth so hard and frantically
Yeah.
just to stay afloat.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, exactly, and people want to, get to the end real quick. I mean, and that's the other part
Yeah,
that I find fascinating. For me, there is no end. There is
right.
no end. Like, the end is, you die. Like, that's like, I mean, and hopefully that's not the end, but I mean, that's what I'm saying, is like, this life, I always find it interesting, especially amongst like working class folks, that, that's who I grew up with. It's like, you work so hard and everything is such a struggle that all you want is kind of for it to like end, so you can just, like, so like the goal is like nothingness, and in regards to like wanting to rest. But for me, what I've realized is that it's kind of the opposite. It's not about getting to the end. It's not about getting to nothing. It's about getting to something. It's about getting to what you actually want. It's about getting to what you really care about and the purpose you have in your heart, in your soul, in your life. Like, I mean, inside of you, like, what do you really want to do with this life? What do you want to impact? What do you want to change? What do you want to touch? Like, what do you want to do with this life? And I think, from my observations, it's really the hard thing is that people end up doing things that they don't want to do because they really feel like that they have to and that there's no other choice. That's really and that's really what you're
Oh,
talking
that's
about today.
sad.
I know,
Isn't
but
that
it's so
sad?
true. It's so
It's so
true
true,
and
but
so sad.
so sad.
It's
Ah,
tragic. It's tragic. And then you see folks who, literally spend their whole lives doing that, right? And that's why I think we're having this conversation today. I'm glad we're having this conversation today because, like I said at the top, like you can have this revelation at any point in your life, even if you're doing something that looks great on the outside. Like, I don't know why, but for me right now, Tina Turner is coming up into my mind. And
mhm,
she was so fabulous at every freaking age.
mhm.
She was just a star, born a star type of person, right? But I mean, when she was young, from what I understand of her biopics, I mean, she was not happy. That's not what she
Nope.
wanted to do. That's what she was told to do, and that's what she was, I mean, literally forced to do, right? And so later in her life, I mean, I think it was when she was in her 40s is when she actually started her own kind of musical career path that was led by her, that was envisioned by her, that was, creatively directed by her. And that is who she really was. That is what she loved. That is, what brought joy and spark into her life. Like, that is really what, I mean, that was her. That was Tina, right? And that is who she wanted to show the world. And she did it. I mean, she did it like no other, right? Like, she did
Yeah.
that. And my point being is, like, it wasn't when she was 27. It wasn't it wasn't when she was famous even. She was already famous, and she was miserable as far as I can tell, right? And so my
Yeah.
point being is that, she at that point in her life decided, no more. I'm not living for anybody else. I'm living for me. And that's what I love about this conversation is that I hope that it invokes in people that this is the time, whatever time it is. If you're not already doing it, if you're not living your dream, if you're not the star of the movie and the director of the movie making the movie, like, get in this. Like, this is your shot. Like, you can start doing it right now. And it can be anything, it can be your wildest dream.
And the Tina Turner example is so fantastic because it's not like she'd made this dramatic career change where she
Right.
wants to become, say, an investment banker or something. She's like,
Right.
I just want to do this, but I want to do it on my own terms
My
and
way.
define it for
Exactly.
myself. And that is
Yes.
so freaking powerful, right? Like to figure out
Yes.
how can you exist and work in a field,
Mm.
but not do it the way everyone else has done it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
And I think about our desire to like, as you definitely pointed out, to like be all that at 20,
mhm.
25,
Mhm.
30, 35.
Mhm.
When all the numbers say like people have their like start reaching their peak performance in like their late 50s for their careers.
Mm.
And
Mm.
especially now, it's probably even later, right? Because I mean, people aren't quote unquote retiring anymore
Right.
because at
Right.
least in my head, I hear retirement, I think, okay, death. So I'm like, what am I, a type A personality, going to do with that?
Right. Exactly. I was just having that discussion today. I'm just like, I don't like the do nothing plan. Like, that is just
Nope.
strange to me.
Mm-mm.
I'm like,
Mm-mm.
it screams nursing home. I'm not about it.
Mm-mm.
And so that's the point is like, what is going to bring you joy? And the other thing too that comes up for me is what's bringing you joy right now where you could, like, I mean,
Yeah.
it's where you are right now and who you are right now. For me, like, we're talking about age, and for me, I just see like constant evolution. If you're a lifelong learner, which we all should be, right? Like, if you
Mm-hmm.
are, if you are paying attention to yourself and the world is changing, you are changing. but you have to pay attention to see that and to know thyself, like, know thyself every stage, every era, every chapter, like, you have to always be in touch because the truth is that we're not the same. I mean, I think we literally, I don't know how this is true, but my understanding is every 7 years, like our whole bodies are changing anyways. It's like physically. And so it's just really interesting for me to think about that and think, our minds are changing, our emotions are changing, our perspective, our experience, all of it, all of it, all of it colors our existence. And so we have to be in touch with that. And we have to accept that whatever I'm doing today or whatever I did yesterday, it doesn't define what I'm going to do tomorrow or in the future at all.
Oh, it makes me think of cancel culture too for some reason, like that whole
Mhm.
like, I don't believe that our mistakes define us. I think
Exactly.
we learn from our
Exactly.
mistakes and we grow from them, and
Yes.
last I checked, I thought the United States was a country that loved redemption stories and underdog stories, and they're like, "You can do anything." And
That's our
I like
thing, yeah.
I like to think that
The
cancel
come
culture
up.
is yeah, that cancel culture is disappearing so that we can all choose to become our highest and best selves. And you're absolutely right. It's not when we're 20 because
Right.
we should be embracing every moment of our lives and seeing them as good things. And that age is a good thing. Like we learn to care
Yes.
less about other people's opinions and we learn to
Yes.
be more firm in who we are. And we learn to ask ourselves questions like, what do I want to do?
Oh, I love that part. I mean, I get so excited when I talk to folks who are just, little 10, 20 years older than me, whatever, because I'm always so impressed with them. I'm just like, oh my gosh, you have all these connections, like somebody for everything. And they're just like, I just got a few years on you, and I'm just like, that's so cool. I'm like, I'm like, oh my God. And in this many years, like maybe I'll be like that person where I'll be able to just, I'll think of everyone and just plug them in. I think it's so cool. And that's the part is like we have to be excited about the future, and if we're not excited about the future, we have to really think about why. And for
Yeah.
me, it's I've taken stock in my really like my mental. I don't know, like my what I can't even describe really, but like we have thoughts every day, right? We have all of these things that kind of come into our psyche, and a lot of it is the day to day, what you got in front of you, but there's also a lot of other stuff. And for different people, it's different things. Some people are flooded with thoughts of the past, right? And sometimes it's
Hmm.
bad things from the past. Sometimes it's good things from the past that they can't let go, and they're not. Sometimes that can be harmful too, where like you don't enjoy what's happening today because you're too fixated on even the good things that happened in the past that you're kind of longing for those days again, right? And some people are fixated, or their minds are filled with thoughts of the future, usually like the recent, like very soon recent future, like what's going to happen tomorrow, what am I going to like, what's going to happen next year, like I'm not going to have money, I'm not going to have the anxiety of it all is what the way that I describe it, of what's going to happen. And for me, it's a scary place to be in, either like to have your head filled with either of those things actually. So it's been such a practice for me in so many ways, and we've talked about like the ways that you can kind of curate your world to change that. um, but I mean, I think one of the reasons why people do the things that they don't want to do is absolutely, again, out of fear. And that fear can come from anxiety about what's going to happen in the future. So I'm very mindful about the ideas of what am I putting in my mind, right? Like, what am I exposing myself to? How much am I exposing myself to on a day to day? Because if we're, flooding our thoughts with bad news all day, and catastrophe kind of information that people like to put out there
Hmm.
so that they're getting attention, that's there for you anytime you want it. But how is it serving you?
And
And yeah,
I believe your body remembers it. Like
yes,
the
as
bad
like a
stuff that
real
you
thing.
yeah.
Yes, yeah. No, it does. It does. Like, I mean, I don't watch, horror films anymore.
I don't either.
Like, even action stuff, I mean, because it's so violent. I mean, I find myself, like, having these intrusive thoughts where I'm just like, "That why?" Like, I haven't seen anything that violent in real life, and it just, like,
Right.
comes back, and I'm like, "This is terrible." Like, I really don't want this in my mind, and so when you talk about, condoing things, like, I'm almost thinking about it for my my own, like, mind and my own psyche because, it really takes a lot of work. You don't get to just throw out those thoughts. That's why they call them intrusive thoughts, right? You actually have to, like, clear out the clutter of the news and the constant bombardment of I wanna say propaganda, but I mean just information, like just
Yeah, yeah.
just, visuals. I mean, I'm a very visual person too, right? But like visuals invoke feelings, and those feelings are real, even if the thing is not real, right? Like you get really scared in a scary movie, right? That's a real feeling that your body went through now.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that's by that I mean, think about what you really want to carry in your body and your mind and be very thoughtful about what you're going to pick up and what you're going to leave because it stays with you.
I've always thought from an entertainment standpoint, I want to feel good when I am
Yes.
being
That's yes.
entertained. Like,
Yes.
I do not want stories about just death and destruction because, it
Mhm.
doesn't really make me feel great.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's my choice for entertainment. And maybe some people like to, really feel their feelings, and that's what makes them feel good.
Mhm. Yeah.
But I read something really fascinating from Adam Grant, the Wharton School professor,
Mhm.
that compared feelings to house guests and said
Mm.
that, some house guests shouldn't be even let in the door because you have to protect yourself. Some
Yeah.
house guests should just like be able to walk through your home and then continue on walking, like anger,
Mm.
because it shouldn't sit with you. But you
Mhm.
recognize them, you see the house guest, and the house guest just keeps on moving. But other
You can
house
welcome
guests,
them to leave. Yes.
yes, right? And I'm like, that's a
Mhm.
great way of explaining feelings and emotions, right? Like
I like
some
that.
should stay, some should sit, some should just move on through, some
Some
shouldn't be
you
even,
are happy to, yeah, have as long-term
yeah,
guests, like, yeah.
yeah,
Returning guests, you're welcome them back over and over again, sure.
yes. Some you might need to deal with, like things like feelings like grief, but
Mm.
understand that they are guests and they don't need to take root for your entire life. Because
Mhm.
really, who wants the house guest that stays forever? Nobody.
Exactly, you know, and one of the secrets of that is not making it a welcoming like, not making it too welcoming of a spot for them to stay forever, so it's like the onus is on you, right, to understand
Mm-hmm.
that part and to make decisions around that part and to be deliberate too. I mean, one of my favorite things is I have someone in my life who is very generous and has people that she allows to come and stay with her whenever somebody needs a place to stay, but her communication is on point and her managing of expectations is just like expertise. Like she has a conversation at the beginning where it's very clear like how long this person is going to be there. And she has no problems with being assertive about it in the friendliest, sweetest way where she just comes out every day and is like, "Good morning. I hope your search is going well. You got 7 more days with us. Thank you." Like, and I just love it so much because I'm like, "This is perfection. You don't have to be rude. You don't have to be passive aggressive." You know what I mean? Like, you
Yep.
don't have to be a terrible, host. I mean, you can be very, very just outright, open, communicative, friendly even, but still talk about real things and communicate your actual, thoughts, feelings, emotions. Like, I mean, you can do all of that with clear, concise language, and nobody can fault you for doing a nice thing. Like, and so I think about it the same way as you're saying that, where it's like, even with like anger, for example, or some emotion that you say, okay, they should be able to walk through, the way I think about that might even be like, again, awareness is key. So maybe it's like, I'm going to be angry for the next 30 minutes and then
Mm-hmm.
that's it. Like, I mean, just like sometimes saying things like that and putting kind of an endpoint on it could help you figure out like this is the right time to move on, or now I'm going to do something to get myself out of this feeling or get this house guest out. Right. And so I love that. Like it just makes it feel like finite and relatable. It helps a visualization of it all. And it also helps remind us that, this too shall pass kind of thing. Like when you're in it, it feels so, unsurmountable. It feels, like this will always be how it's going to be now. Like, especially with grief, I think it's one of the hardest ones where you can't really visualize your way out of it. And so it's always good to have some kind of reminder that, none of this is permanent. These emotions do pass. They come in, they come out, and we have some power over it too.
I could not agree more. I had an experience this week where I told my husband, I said, you know what? I don't think I'm a total loser. And he's like, huh? Okay, what? I'm like, you know, some days you just like, you see all these other people and you're like, huh, this confuses me and this perplexes me because they seem very, let's say, malcontent in their situations, and they are at the top of their field, but they are just
Mm,
not pleased. And it's, what you brought up earlier, like you do not know what it is like in those shoes until you're in there. And I have
right.
this week watched some of these people just start wallowing in their situations, right? Not that they lament their success, but more like they lament what pressures they have to endure because of it,
Mm, mhm.
right? Whether it's the isolation or whether it's presuming that you should take a certain position or this is what your side always said.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And until you see those things, you're like, huh, okay. And then this past legislative session, I started saying no to things because I was like, no, that does not bring me joy in my work. No,
Love
I'm
it.
not going to do that. And
Gatekeeping for
that's
good stuff.
gatekeeping for good stuff. And I realized that by doing that, it puts me in a happier place. And for me, that's winning, right? Like my happiness and
Yes.
protecting my happiness and protecting my peace of mind is so important to me that
Mm,
I will have started to learn to be more active about protecting my peace of mind and my happiness. And maybe for some people, that peace of mind and happiness is I need to be at 15 events every day, which I don't think is actually viable in a human schedule, but there's people like that,
every week.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
every day, every week. And I'm just like, I wonder what would happen if everybody had started asking themselves, what would have made me happier? Or what do
Mm,
I really want to do? Or how, or like Tina, how do I want to define this for me?
yes.
And I feel like a lot
Yes.
of our predecessors did a lot of this is what this square hole looks like, and I need to be a square peg so I can fit in this
Yeah.
square hole in this
Yes.
field. And I think as things have like maybe partially pandemic, I think anything beyond anyone younger than a boomer knows that the rules are meant to be just kind of like guidelines. Like I think
Mhm.
the boomers were the ones that are like the rules are the rules and you must follow them. And everybody else was like, this is my summary. Gen X is like, eh, mm, rules, not really sure. And then millennials came around and they're like, yeah, no, just hard pass. And then I think Gen Z is like, no, no, not even having this conversation. No, this
Rewriting
does
the
not
rules.
exist.
Now we've
Yeah,
been working on this.
yeah,
Step aside.
yes. We have we will fix everything the rest of you have not done appropriately to destroy these rules. Because the first group of
Yes.
you just didn't care. The second group of you are like, maybe I care, but do I really want to do anything about it? And the third, we're like,
Mhm.
yep, we're done with this.
Yeah, it's like millennials talked about it and we're like, yeah, this is why we reject this. This is not good. Gen Z accepted that and said, okay, let's get to work.
Yes. And Gen X was just completely apathetic. It was like, I'm just gonna do whatever I want. So yeah, whatever.
Which I love too. But anyways, Yeah, and so we're in the spot now where, it's kind of funny that you talk about it that way because I think about that as, and all of them are in the same like workforce together. And so it's, I
Yeah. Oh
mean,
yeah.
not always, but I mean, definitely in a lot of places. I mean, boomers refuse to retire, right? So,
Yeah. We're
it's,
all like waiting for them to get out.
yeah, and so it's really interesting to see that like all of these perspectives, are trying to operate in the same space. And it's funny, like it came up earlier, you talked about how, that perspective changes, especially depending on who has power in regards to what, is being tried, what's being pushed in the workspaces now, and how certain generations or even certain parts of the workforce are rejecting, that perspective and those priorities. And so it's really fascinating to see how it's all playing out. And, one of the biggest things for me that's coming up is the mindset of, what is important and what is supposed to be prioritized. And really it's very philosophical
Yeah.
if you really think about it in the larger sense. Like I just watched this really disturbing thing on Netflix last night that was what is it? It was called something like Don't Worry Darling, and it was basically like spoiler alert, like it was basically a forced simulation back to like 1950s, like, family structures and housewife situation and all of that. But it was like most of the women were being forced into this simulation life. And I
Oh,
know.
sorry.
I know, it was very, like, almost like Stepford Wives kind of, like, throwback, right? And, it just made me think a lot about, like, our societal norms. It made me think a lot about, like, how we define what is the correct thing to do, right? And then,
Oh
like,
yeah.
how so many people have, like, a very different perspective. Some people really still harken back to, this old I don't even know, like, I can't even explain it except to say, like, people are in love with this idea of subjugating women, in certain ways, and so, there's all of that, and it just makes me think as we're talking about this now, that all of that has an impact on us as individuals that we just have to recognize,
Hmm.
right? Like, all of that messaging, all of that propaganda, all that socializing, all of this covert and overt messaging that comes through, as we've talked about many times, our social circles, our schools, our, churches, our friends, our family, like literally everywhere, TV, radio, like I mean news, movies, it comes from everywhere, right? We're getting it all the time, and we're getting it since we're children, right? All of that colors and forms our understanding of who we are supposed to be and what we are supposed to be doing. And I think that's what we're talking about today, right? Is like,
Yeah.
are we doing things because we think that's what we're supposed to do? This is what society has messaged to us. This is who we're supposed to be and what we're supposed to do. Or are we doing things from a genuine, authentic space inside of us that is, we're leading from our individuality. And it just dawns on me that, it's probably really tough for people to even go there and give themselves permission to do that because we've been taught to see ourselves as part of some collective. And there's, not necessarily anything wrong with that. It's just, you have to define at some point where that makes sense for you to draw the line, essentially, right? And for me, it's always been this understanding that, like, I'm going to love my family. I'm going to be close to my family and, other people that are important to me. But I've always prioritized my individual happiness. Like, that's just been for me. Like, of course I'm going to do that. Right. And do I sacrifice for people? Yes, absolutely. Do I do things I don't want to do? Yes. But I also like, on the bigger part of things, if that makes sense, right? It's like I'll do that in small ways because it brings me joy to bring other people joy sometimes too.
Hmm.
But on the bigger things, I know that I'm going to set up my life in a way that's going to bring me happiness overall. Because if I'm miserable, I just know myself and I know that I'm not going to do this forever. And I think that's the other thing is like, we're not even talking about burnout culture, but that is obviously like a natural response or a natural, a consequence of
Oh,
just
100%.
doing what you're told and doing what other people expect you to do, right? Because if you don't really know and you don't take stock and understand yourself and what truly brings you joy, which is really the exercise that needs to happen first, and then you don't start defining it more and more and more. I mean, that's really the journey that I went on where I was like, I think I want to be in this field. And I was right. But then I was like, but not with these people, and then not doing this specific thing. Like I'm looking for this kind of, group of people. I'm looking for this kind of specific work. And it just got more and more narrow and more defined. And then I was able to, really get closer to finding the things that I wanted because I knew exactly what they were, right? And that's the other thing is like when you're doing things that you think people want you to do, like, be a lawyer, be a doctor, or whatever. Like you don't even really know what that means. You're just kind of, and they don't know what it means. The people telling you to do it, they don't know
Yep.
because they've never done it. So like they're
Or
literally
even
telling
if
you to
they
do
have,
something. Yeah,
they're doing it from their
for
perspective,
the,
right? And not
and also they don't know how you're gonna like it. so,
exactly.
so it might like I somebody was telling me about a litigation attorney that they knew who's like 89 years old and still practicing litigation, right? Like, and this guy just freaking, like lives and breathes litigation. And he literally told people one day, I don't understand other people and how they don't want to do this all day, every day. Like, for him, this is he is getting his life. You know what I mean? Like, this is
That's
everything to
awesome.
him,
That like that
which is
is his
great. Yeah,
joy. Yeah.
that's his joy. And he's not giving it up. Are you kidding me? Like he's not gonna retire. Like he's gonna die doing litigation. Like this is his thing, right? And I love that for him. For him. For me, that would be a
Yeah.
nightmare. But for him, it is wonderful. And I mean, to the fact that like he doesn't even understand how somebody else couldn't love this. So like literally he would be that person telling you, oh yeah, you should be a lawyer, like you should get into litigation. And if he told me that, like he would be dead wrong. Like that would not be
Same.
the right thing for me. But what I'm saying is that like you literally can't impute your such a lawyerly word, right? Like you can't you can't put what's good for you onto somebody else and make it fit. Like you just and I mean that's the beauty of this world is like everybody has something else. And I think the key to it is like back to old philosophical times of like know thyself, like really know
Yep.
yourself. And if you don't know yourself and you don't know what brings you joy, you got to start trying things. And I really think that that's what youth is for. I think youth is that maybe, for me anyways, youth is that phase in your life where you just try things until you're like, "Oh, this is it. This is this is
Try
this
things,
is
move
it." Yes.
away, move to different
Yes.
states and countries and
Yes. Meet new people,
yep.
like get out of your
Yep.
comfort zone like when you're young and you have all this energy and all of this, hopefully physically good health and like you're just able to do all these things without how hard it's going to be when you get older. That's when you do it, like you do it, you go out and try all these things, try all the food, try new places if you can, like,
Yeah.
I mean, it is really the time. And that's what makes me sad when people like, get bogged down with these other things, which I know it feels unavoidable. And I mean, I want to say maybe it is, but I don't even believe that anymore. I really don't, especially today. Like when I was younger, all I could see were really like, and so many people that I lived with, all they could see is, this is what's out here. There's factory work, like there's you could be a musician. I know a lot of musicians, but really that was just like a side hustle, like there's ways to make money. Maybe you could make a business, but it was it. And now, I mean, the world has just changed in such a dramatic way in my mind. Like I don't know why, because I don't, I have no intention of doing like side hustles or any of those things that like, it doesn't matter. But what's interesting, not even side hustles, what is interesting is I find myself watching videos on YouTube about all the new ways that people are making money. I just find it fascinating. Like, I mean, it's just fascinating. Like, there's this whole other industry, or it's almost like this whole other like digital world that just didn't exist before, and you can make money in it. And it's just
Mhm.
it fascinates me because it makes me understand anyways that like it feels to me anyways that the opportunities are boundless now, whereas before you really did need to travel. Like you need to get out of this place because there are no opportunities here, right? But there are different, like, I mean, you go to Hollywood and it's like you could be a stuntman. Like you can't do that in Ohio. You know what I mean? So it's like it was very different then where it was like you had to operate in the physical world. Now, I mean, the digital world it's kind of changed everything in my mind where yes, all of those things do all of those things so you can be exposed and like you can expose yourself right now in your living room, like go to the internet and find out what people are doing across the world or across the internet. I mean,
Yeah,
it's just wild how many opportunities there are now.
I completely agree. And I was thinking about your explanation of that movie going to 1950s and something I read this
Hmm.
week about some social media phenomenon this summer in the United States called the trad wife or traditional wife. And I'm like, not in my
Mm.
feed because I don't think I set that up. But then I was also like, then I was started thinking, I'm like, having being a person who was an immigrant and is an immigrant, sorry, and grew up in surrounded by immigrants. I'm like, uh, I don't does not compute because like the non-American males that I grew up with, you
Mhm.
did cooking and did cleaning
Yes,
and
yes,
raised their children. And it wasn't
right,
like this. And I'm
yeah.
like, huh? So this thing
Hmm.
is all like an American thing. It's not like a this is how this is in the world situation.
I like how they put it in the Barbie, movie. I'm stereotype Barbie, like, I'm stereotypical Barbie. I mean, I think that's really more accurate, right? Like, this is like
Yeah.
the idea of the stereotype of, American housewives of the 1950s or whatever it might be, right? Like, I mean, that is a very specific stereotype, and I mean, I guess I wish I knew. Like, I'm assuming that it was true for some people, but I don't even know that I know that that's really true. Like,
I
I wasn't
know.
there. I don't know, like, if it was a fantasy or, like every time I see it, I think about it as, like, some weird male fantasy, honestly, and I don't know why, but I'm just like, I don't believe that women were ever, like I don't know. I guess can't say I don't believe. I just wonder. I guess I wonder if it is really the way it was portrayed or if that's the way that TV portrayed it
I just
because
for
there's so many Black American women, for example, that was not their reality at all, for
correct.
example, So to me, I'm just like, okay, that's maybe some of people's lives.
I don't even know if I want to go that far because I hear about it and I think to myself, well, they just don't understand. They don't understand humans because I do
Mm,
not think one gender fits in certain characteristics
right,
and one
right.
gender fits in another characteristics. And
Yeah,
I
and
think
if they
it's
were
all mixed.
forced yeah,
Yeah.
if they were forced, then, like, obviously people were not happy, like, maybe some people were and some people weren't, but I mean, I think there was, like, a whole little, like, doctors giving a lot of housewives certain pills too at this time, so, I mean, that so, I
Oh
mean,
my God, I can't even.
that's just also an interesting thing where it's like, what is the truth? What is the whole underbelly of it? So again, that's why for me it reads fantasy because I don't think anything could have
Yeah,
ever been that perfect.
I
And
don't think so
and
either.
and even if it was, and I mean, I don't even know why I'm saying perfect because it doesn't feel perfect at all to me. But I'm just
Nope.
saying, like, in the concept of what they're seeking, even in this fantasy, like, I humans are messy as hell. Like, I just don't believe it. I don't buy it. I think it's just a fantasy, if anything else. And why you have that fantasy, I don't know, because it's devoid of humanity.
Just, just like I don't understand when women aren't allowed to be strong
Hmm.
or when they are in control and direct, they're bossy or bitchy. And I
Hmm.
don't understand why.
God, I still do that to myself, Tesla. I'm like, I don't want to be
Yeah,
a
no,
bitch, but
no, 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 no,
let
no,
me say
no,
this
no,
thing.
no. Because we all know that you, Sai, are not going to be rude to people with any
Right,
intent. And
right.
I think we have to give ourselves permission to screw up every now and again, but also know that we're going to adapt and correct it.
Mm.
At the
Mhm.
same
Yeah.
time, I think whether it's women being labeled bossy or bitchy or men being labeled because they have emotions
Mm.
and they
Mhm.
acknowledge those emotions. Like, ugh, no, stop putting people in boxes and just let them be.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, I think that's why I think that's why there's so much backlash against, people who are questioning the binary. I really think that that's it, is like, it is a very, like, profound philosophical kind of challenge to all of us to really
Hmm.
think about, like, how are we assigning gender roles? Why are we assigning
Yep.
gender roles to begin with? And then when you ask, what is gender? And it gets confusing, it kind of like breaks down the whole house of cards, right? Where you're like, well, then none of this makes sense. And so, like, this is really a continuation of that first thought I was describing, which is this is all very much coming from, societal programming. This is all very much coming from scripts that were made for not just you and me, but for all of us, right? Like, this is people wanting order and wanting consistency and wanting, craving, homogeny, which I think is so fascinating in the US, where I think we're supposed to be about individualism.
That's what I
And
thought,
well,
but
that's what
I
most
don't know anymore.
people who come here actually like have this idea that I find so sad. I'm like we should be sued for, like, what's it called, false advertising, because
Mm,
we're
absolutely.
just we're putting stuff out there that is really not the case. And so, I mean, I get it. Again, it's like human stuff. I always can relate to human stuff, and people want security, and security comes from, predictability. And I think that's where this idea of, like, getting people in the boxes feels really good. It's an instinct that comes because we want to have predictability and safety. And so I get it. And at the same time, I hope that we are intellectual enough to feel this sense that we can get through having differences and letting people be individuals and still have harmony. That's what I hope for anyways. And in my mind, it takes a lot of consciousness work, because
It
when you
does.
let, like, kind of your, like, unconscious fear take over, that's where you get bias, stereotype, fear of one another, and then it's like a sense to force, con, confirmation, or not confirmation, but, conformancy, if that's a word, right? That's where all of that comes from. And so again, it all comes back to our actual internal work. I just find that fascinating. But, like, we cannot operate with one another, and we can't build each other up or even accept each other. I'm going through this DEI training or program, really, and they call it, adaptation, and it's really fascinating. I'm learning a lot about, like, just, the human workings again, because they talk about, like, these different stages you can be in, and one of them is minimalization, where you see everybody has differences and you accept that, but you also try to minimize the differences in order for the group to kind of move forward together, if that makes sense, right? Like, you're trying to be like, okay, well, we're all different, but we all have this in common and we all want this to happen. So, like, let's make that happen, right? And that's fine for effectiveness, but you're not truly accepting other people, or creating an environment where everyone feels comfortable expressing the whole of who they are. And there's
Or
there's a
being the
couple of
whole
other
of who they
steps.
are.
Being who they are and really, like, showing up who they are fully, and not having to code switch, hide parts of themselves,
Yep.
make themselves small. All of
Yep.
those things are things that we've experienced, right? And it's just
Hmm.
fascinating to kind of think about it on the whole, and how everyone has responsibility in making it, like, fertile ground for each person to really, grow into them and their entire selves and show their entire selves. And the other part of that, the other stage of that, the stage where we want to be, is adaptation, where we're finding that everybody is bringing their whole selves to the table, to the conversation, to the community, and is being themselves all the time, and is not apologetic for it. And everyone else is not only accepting them, but really celebrating them for who they are. And it's like it takes that much in order for people to be themselves, because if anything is, what's the word, like, um if anything is really discouraged, right, then people are going to start hiding that part. It's not going to go away. That's just they're still who they are, right? They might be masking that part with something that sits better with you or makes you feel more comfortable. But it's really interesting how each of us has a responsibility to one another to create an environment where, each person feels free and welcome to be their whole selves.
So, from a practical standpoint, what part of yourself do you wish people saw more of?
Mm, good question. Um, it's funny because I think one of the reasons I love the podcast work that we do is because I get to exercise my like philosophical, intellectual side. And it's kind of strange to say, but I don't get to do that anymore in a lot of spaces. Like I got to do it a lot in school, and it was fun. And I love that part about me. Like I loved philosophy. I loved all of this, this thinking about society. And I get to do it some, at work, but not like I used to. And so like I'm in my phase of like doing things, like trying to make change, and it's a lot of doing as opposed to thinking anymore. And so it's kind of funny, like whenever I have told people a little bit more about how I see myself, I always talk about that because it kind of it kind of flows from that, right? But it's a side of myself that actually not a lot of people really get. I get to have these nice long intellectual conversations with people like you and some of my other closest friends, but not with everybody. And so they get to see a lot more like, action, doing, day to day, let's get it going type of person, or like the fun social person, and so which is another lovely part about me that I love. But it's just another part. And I mean there's a lot of parts of me that I don't think people, see on the day to day, which is okay. It's not that I'm hiding anything. um but I think there's also a lot of like, to the conversation I was just starting, there's a lot of culture stuff that just goes away.
Yeah,
And it's not that I'm necessarily trying to hide it or I'm ashamed of it. Like when it comes up, I'll tell you all about it, but it doesn't come up. And
I
so I
completely
find I
agree
find
and
that
understand.
fascinating. Yeah, it's just interesting that it's like it doesn't come up in a lot of spaces that I'm in. No one's interested. Nobody's asking me about it, you know? And it's such a huge part of who I am. Like it's very much a huge part. And I find myself longing, for more and seeking more, people who understand my cultural perspective, people who share in my lived experience. Like I find myself reaching out for that. And I didn't really realize why until I started understanding that, like, oh, I've been in a lot of places now where that's not a thing that comes up. It's not a thing I have in common with people, so we're not talking about it, and people are not really asking about it, which is, it's not that it's a bad thing. It's just that's it's not conducive. It's not conducive for that. So that's just a part that's it's just it could be missing entirely if I wasn't intentional about it. It's really a strange, interesting thing about something that was so much a part of your everyday life, and then it becomes a thing that you have to try to like preserve and keep up with. It's strange, and it's definitely something that people wouldn't, they wouldn't know unless they asked, I guess.
But it's so important, right? Because I believe that people's cultural identity informs their decision making, and we need a
Mhm.
broad swath of different cultures to have decision making that is productive and effective and efficient and income generating. And all the data shows that the more diverse those opinions are around the table, the better it is for everybody.
Yes, yes, yes. Do you feel the same way? Is it culture for you? Is it something else?
It's 100% culture. And I've been, for the last, I would say 2 weeks, I've been trying to be even more intentional than I have. Because imagine, so I think of how I'm almost jealous of your culture because at least it's around you
Mhm.
every day, right? Like I have to
Yeah.
intentionally seek out
Right.
my culture because it's so small. Like,
And
where
harder
do you,
to find the people, the
it's,
community, all of that. Yeah.
it is. So I listen to a lot more Swedish news in Swedish, and I don't hide the fact that I'm Swedish, but
Right.
I think a lot of Americans think that, oh, well, that's just a white culture, or
Mhm.
Europeans are different from Americans. Like, yeah, we fucking are. So different. Like the old world, whether it's old world America or old world Europe, so different than today's American, right? Like those
Mhm.
cultures that are rooted for hundreds and thousands of years,
Mhm.
so different. The way we think about things, I am trying to do a better job of expressing it in a way that is, I hate the idea that I'm trying to make it more palatable for Americans, but
Mhm.
Swedes are so intent on equality and have been for
Mm.
decades and decades, like longer than I've been alive. They have
Mhm.
been keen on, embracing other cultures, bringing them into Sweden, making sure everybody
Mm.
is treated as equally as possible. And of course, it's not perfect, but
Mhm.
they address the system so that the problems are not systemic or to the best of their ability. Whereas I think we do a lot of brushing things under the rug in the United States. And also the idea, like breaking down gender roles. There are no gender roles in Sweden, right? Like you don't say, "Oh, women stay home and women clean the house and women rear the kids." No, no, that's that's not happening. There is like mandatory paternal leave in Sweden, and everyone across the board is taught how to basically take care of yourself, whether it's cooking, cleaning, or
Nice.
mending things. And
That's
there's also
just
this
smart.
sense, right?
Everyone
And
should.
it's also like this really strong communal sense of pride in Sweden, but it's made up a bunch of individuals, right? Like this whole idea of the
Mm.
family unit is not something you talk about in Sweden. It is
Hmm.
about what you as an individual do and contribute. And all these things that I'm trying to bring forward because I don't want it to get lost, right? Like, how do you keep the elements of your culture alive when there's a great push to be like everybody else, or the table doesn't want to hear an opinion that is deviant, or doesn't want to address the fact that your culture informs your opinions, or that you even have a culture. And for
Absolutely.
me, like culture is so paramount in my personal identity. I'm there with you. Like
Mhm. Mhm.
I think it's important to talk about it, and I think it's important to bring out the parts of your culture that are important to you and weave them into your decision making and how you treat people because it matters. It
Yeah.
matters for your own sense of self and it matters for the communal group too.
Yeah, for the collective. I mean, it's that's literally what we're supposed to be. I mean, I think that's the most disheartening thing about growing up here is that, you're given all of these amazingly beautiful concepts, ideologies, and then they're slowly torn down in front of you as you
Hmm.
experience the world and the way it really is. But I think, you're right, and it makes me think about, how can we do this better actually? And I don't know. I don't have all the answers. All I know is one thing I really appreciated from one group that I was in. I think I've shared before that they would do a culture share at the beginning of every meeting, and it was cool. I just
Yeah.
really appreciated the fact that like you kind of like it kind of gives you permission also. Like it's kind of a sneaky thing where it's like you think you're just sharing out, with other people, but you're actually being really vulnerable and
Yep.
showing people a part of you that, otherwise you absolutely would not. And it gives you permission to then like act from that space of authenticity, if you will, right? Where it's like,
Yeah.
well, people already know that that's me, so they have the context in a way, right? And it's really interesting because assimilation is a bitch. I mean, that's that's the way I think
Yeah.
about it, is like this whole move of assimilation of really, I mean, forced assimilation is a real thing that I just keep learning more and more about. That's really tragic, but it makes so much sense to me now that, like, the forces are so great, and you feel it so viscerally, that this is what you're supposed to do, and you're supposed to, again, like you were talking about earlier, like, molding yourself to fit, in that the peg into the, like, I mean, all of that is real, like, it is actually, like, our lived experience that we find
Mhm.
throughout our whole lives of, like, okay, now assimilate here, assimilate there, and it's a survival tool too. I mean, I don't want to discount the fact that, like, this is not just, oh, people choose to do it because someone said to do it. Like, no, it's not. I don't want to discount the force of it is very powerful, and there's a lot of, rewards and punishments involved, all around it. Like, all the psychological tools, they throw all of it at you. And
Mhm.
I don't think that we even know what it looks like to actually be multicultural. I don't think that we know. And actually, I could just say that I know we don't know, because I'm in spaces with people who want that, but they don't know how. And they don't even know that they're not doing it. That's the scariest part, is that they don't know that
Yeah.
they're not doing it. So they think they're already doing it. Like, the propaganda is so
Yeah.
powerful. We're just like, oh, the melting pot, like, we got people of all these different colors in the same space, like, we're doing it. And it's like, actually, you're not. I hate to tell you,
Yeah.
And so that's really fascinating to me to see, like, these conversations happening. I mean, I wish that they were happening in every space. I know that we've progress, like, there is progress happening. There's also backlash happening, right? There's also, like,
Mhm.
DEI stuff is getting closed down at all the public universities in Texas, because because our government said no, right? Like, they don't like this.
Yeah.
So there's backlash happening, and I wish that it was different. I wish that everyone was having these conversations, because you don't know what you don't know. And it's kind of, I almost feel like it's a little bit unfair. Like, and when you say, like, you're trying to make things palpable for the US, I think what you are probably actually doing is just trying to break through to people, because, like I always say, like, you can't talk to someone if they can't hear you. And
Mhm.
so it's not about, like, trying to water yourself down or your concepts down or anything like that. It's just, how can I reach people where they can really hear this and accept it, and maybe incorporate it into their lives, right? And into their philosophies. And so we're at this
I don't even
place
know if I
now.
wanna go that far. I just want them to acknowledge that it exists.
you're like you're like, that's a dream. That is such baby steps. Can we get this
Right?
far first? That's the practical utilitarian. I love it. I love it, but it's real. Like, I mean, how are we gonna get anywhere? For me, I'm always thinking about the
Yeah.
the big goal, but it's like, there are tons of little baby steps, and
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
probably one of the things, like, I'm a big vision girl, so I like to think about the end state, and I get impatient, and it's hard for me to go back to every little baby step, but each one is important, actually. And so,
Absolutely it
doing
is.
the work is actually really hard. And again, it's about, like, what pain are you willing to go through to get what you really want?
Or for I'll rephrase that for everyone listening. Think about, what do you want? What would bring you the most joy? Like,
Mhm.
if we're gonna talk about pain, let's also talk about what's going to be the most joy. And I think if you
Yes.
think about the most joy, that also means the least amount of pain. So where
Mhm.
do your thresholds land, right? Like, because for especially for somebody like me, like when I say my ultimate goal is to be happy, what I want is to be happy. My version of happy is not like delirious American happy where it's like a big toothy grin. My version is like Swedish happiness where it's like contentment and
Content.
calm.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
an easy floating, just kind of ah.
Yeah.
And the smile is just like, it's a smile. There's no teeth showing. It's just like, bliss.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
So I hope everybody listening thinks to themselves, how much pain are you willing to endure, or where's your joy threshold? What do you want your joy to look like?
Yeah. 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 I
And know
agree.
that you
And I
deserve it and that you have permission to go find it.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, yes. And we're gonna get there. I mean, again, it's a journey. Get inward, look inside, and really spend time with yourself, figuring out and setting your intention for the path you want to go. And wherever you are in your life, you can switch paths at any point. You can set a new direction anytime. And you deserve it. I don't even want to say you deserve it because people don't like that.
Yeah.
You're worthy of that, right? Like you're worthy of it.
Yeah.
This is your life. You get to live your whole life, however it is that really can bring you the most joy. So I'm so glad we had this conversation because it's pertinent right now. I think we're at a place in the world where a lot is changing fast, and we need to figure out, where we're going to go and set that intention. So thank you, Tessa.
Thank you. And thanks for everybody thinking about change and adapting as a good thing, right? Like it can bring
Yes,
out the best. So let's all think about how we can change ourselves, how we can change what we're doing, how we can change our community for the best. Because this is
absolutely.
all, after all, a rebellion to bring out the best in everything. Because we want to live in a world that is the best, where everybody's happy and everybody has the ability to feel kindness and receive kindness.
Yes, and they know they're worthy of it. So let's go do it. Y'all stay uplifted, and we'll see you next time.